audience in just a minute, allowing Dr. Job one brief question before we do so.
Minister Barth, I'm sure you're aware that in Trinidad and Tobago, many young people, and some not so young, risk their lives growing marijuana.
They do.
They don't get any subsidies.
They don't.
And you're complaining that we can't sell all the cocoa we can sell. Does that not have to do with the fact that the people who have been planning, and I hope you in your position could understand that model, and find a way to deal with the labor problem and the profit problem that is the real baneful influence in agriculture? So you should really be telling us here tonight what you need to do to imitate the marijuana model in your agricultural sector.
Well, let me give you an example of what we're doing with cocoa, all right? And you're quite right that young people and entrepreneurs are going to be driven by two things. One is money, and the second is glamour, okay? And I think with cocoa we can produce both. The ministry's already had discussions with an international chocolatier who's prepared to purchase all of the cocoa from the small farmers that are available, thereby bypassing two sets of middlemen. The Cocoa and Coffee Board here and the European traders. They are prepared to invest in the small farmers associations in Trinidad. Any profits that they'll buy, of course, initially the cocoa at the price they would normally have paid the trader. So we've cut out two middlemen in the way. So the initial small farmer gets a much higher price, first of all. Secondly, any profits that are made from the sale of cocoa manufactured or grown in Trinidad and Tobago comes back to the cooperative and is shared amongst the chocolatier and the cocoa farmer. But I'll go further. Because it's important to the chocolatier that the cocoa farmer continues to grow, continues to get better, they have also agreed that they would play a part in ensuring that the cocoa farmers maintain international standards or get up to international standards with regard to maintenance of their farms, with regard to new pruning techniques, and so on and so forth. So in one fell swoop, in that particular example, we are now in a position to create a profitable and glamorous exercise because it's an export market, with the opportunities for cocoa farmers to go abroad and meet with their customers and so on and so forth. And that's the type of model we're attempting to engender. And as the Honourable Minister said in the budget statement, agriculture must be profitable. One of the things that we found, and I've said it continually to the Agricultural Society who's here and others, one of the things we found, and through no fault of their own, is that the farming community, by and large, are very disorganized. They understand cash flow, which is from crop to crop, but they don't understand profit and loss as a business entity. And therefore, that's one of the things that we're going to have to hold their hands a little bit. We're also going to have to hold their hands to try to reorganize and organize the sector. So as an example, from the 1st of January, and I've already mentioned this in a press conference to the Agricultural Society and to National Food Crop Farmers and others, all farmers from the 1st of February must be registered. You must be registered on the ministry's database from the 1st of January next year if you are to be in a position to be regarded as a registered farmer, and if you are to access an ADB loan, and if you are to access anything else with regard to farming, you must be registered. And that way, we can track, for example, who's planting what, when they're planting it. They can track who else is planting tomatoes in January, February, and March, because as you know, in addition to the issues of drought and flooding, you have the other issues that create demand and supply problems. If the market can only take 1,000 pounds of tomato in every month, January, February, March, and you have 20 people involved in planting tomatoes, and you have 5,000 pounds of tomatoes on the market, the price does that. Okay, yes, the consumer benefits in that one particular month, but the law of demand and supply is such that suddenly, in the month of February, nobody grows tomatoes because there was an excess in the market in January, and suddenly the price goes up. And in the next month, it does the same thing. Again, when you have that together with the vagaries of flooding and so on, you have a seesaw in the marketplace and a yo-yo with regard to pricing. And I think it's, if we can get together and organize the sector effectively with the farmers and the ministry, you will have a price that farmers know throughout the year they will get for their produce, and a price that the consumer knows, by and large, they will pay for their produce.
Thank you very much. Let's turn to our live audience now and invite you to ask any questions you wish to either the Minister of Finance or Minister Vasant Bharat. Of course, we are asking you to please introduce yourself by name or at least the organization which you represent. And this is an opportunity to ask any of the pertinent questions or make comments perhaps on the allocations that your particular sector did or did not receive, and to probe the ministers further on the budget of 2011. We have microphones being passed around the audience, so all you have to do at this time is indicate that you would like to ask a first question. And here we have, good evening.
Good evening, Honourable Ministers. My name is Ernest Messiah from the Government Pensioners Association. There are four principal things that I'm interested in. First, you gave an increase of $3,000 or up to $3,000 for government pensioners. But there are a large number of government pensioners, something like about 10,000, 12,000, who have pensions above $3,000 but have not received any increase over the years. This thing of just increasing the pensions to $3,000 does not cater for them at all. The second thing is, what about the judges, retired judges? There are about 20 or so of them who have been subsisting for years on inadequate pensions. Would it break the budget to bring them up to the pensions currently applicable to those posts and give them at least a 50% of the judicial conduct allowance applicable to those posts? Now, these are very important persons, and if you do not give them a pension that is able to allow them to live adequately in their retirement, you're going to be having difficulty in accessing new judges. What you're finding is happening at present is the suitable people are willing to accept temporary judgeships, but they're not accepting permanence. In other words, what you have to do is to ensure that the middle and upper level public servants and the judges receive pensions that are adequate to allow them to have their comfortable standard of living. The next thing is, in 2008, the then government equated NIS with government pensions. And they said, as from the 1st of January 2008, you will get $1,000 extra as an NIS pension, which means that you have had an increase in your pension. But unfortunately, at that time, there were around 1,500 pensioners in the age group 95 or 92 upwards who do not receive an NIS pension. What has been done about that? We have brought that up to Mr. O'Neill, we brought it up to the last Minister of Finance, and nothing has been done. And then there is the question of the colony workers who, when they were given their, what do we call it, their VSEP, were induced to give that money into the ADB, which was then invested in the UTC. And suddenly we hear the investment failed and they get nothing. Now, these are poor, hard-working people. We have at last decided to help out the CLICO people, the HDC people. What are we doing about these people?
Thank you very much. Let's take it over to the Minister of Finance, who may wish to comment on the question raised. They're generally covering different categories of pensioners and the way in which their packages are affected or not. Minister.
Well, our working pensions have now only started. There is need to develop what we have described as a universal harmonized pension plan for the nation. There's no doubt that at this point in time, many of our senior citizens are not being adequately compensated to maintain their level of living in an inflationary world in which we live. So I am in great sympathy with those who have received pension that has not changed for many years because and they are above the 3,000 limit. What our objective has been is to deal with the first level, which is those below 3,000. We want to set a minimum standard of income for people, and we start with that group to start with. One group that has bothered me a lot, and I would have loved to deal with it, and we did discuss it, are the public servants and teachers who have retired so many years ago and have not had any indexation of their pension, and they are now living under very trying circumstances. And I recognize that, and I will say in my own constituency of Tunapuna, that was one of the strongest calls that the people made to me when I was campaigning. I tried my best to deal with it, and we were not successful in getting the resources to fund that exercise. We had our consultants actually look at it, and the figures that they came up with made it difficult. I have not taken it off our radar screen, but at this point in time, I could not accede to that without affecting further our deficit position. So I sympathize with that. I know it will not help them, but I know it's a major problem that we must address shortly. The problem has been, just to complete, is that we have never really developed a systematic program of supporting our senior citizens on a sustainable basis. And now we need to put that into place, but obviously it may not help our senior citizens of today, as I would like to. But I am still open to dealing with the problem that I have suggested in due course.
May I make a final intervention? In the 2008 and the 2009 budgets, the Minister of Finance said, we are in the process of revising pensions. We have consultants employed. We expect by the middle of 2010 to have the revised plan, etc. What has happened there?
You're right. That has been, pension reform has been on the agenda now for almost 10 to 15 years, if not more. And when I met with the consulting group, was well recognized. I indicated to them that they should come before the end of this year with the framework for a universal and harmonized pension plan. And then we can, within the context of that framework, deal with all the problems as early as we can. But I did ask them to accelerate the work and let us have such a program now. Too much time has elapsed in what has been called the reform process, which has not yielded any benefits.
Thank you very much, Minister of Finance, commenting on questions of pension reform. Perhaps we'd like to have another question from the floor now, perhaps in another sector. Let's go to this side of the room first, and then we'll get back to you. We have two questions on my right. Perhaps the microphone can be directed towards that side of the room. And of course, we are live here from the financial tower of the Financial Center here in Port of Spain. It's an interactive forum. We are live with our guests here, and in a little while from now, we'll be opening up the lines to take calls from members of the public, as well as questions via text message. Could you please tell us at least your name or the name of your organization that you represent?